our show is it's going to be unique.
You are what you do. You can say any amount of things that you want to say, but what you do is what everybody sees.
People are like, oh, I'm just going to JV it. Like, it's just JV it. Like, what the hell is that mean?
I cannot tell you how excited I am to hang out with you guys today, so thank you so much.
Well, then that end buyer could come back and say, well, I didn't fully understand that it was subject to.
That's not a thing. Like, the SEC has thought of all of these things. They've been here since 1932.
And you can do what you want with your property.
Buyers have time, they have negotiating power, they have options.
Oh my gosh, I'm blown away by your inexperience, and they've been in business 20 years.
And that includes things other people put on your property, right? It's your property that'll be okay. Suddenly, cousin Jimmy's in a lawsuit.
A novation is replacing one contract or one obligation with another.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Yes.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today, our topic is wholesaling the right way. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm here with Sean St. Clair. If you're new to the show, make sure to go to our channel. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and X. On all of those, you can find us at the handle @InRem Podcast. That's @InRem Podcast. But I want you to go there. I want you to like and subscribe. That helps us out a ton. Also, if you want to just download an audio version of the podcast, easy enough to do. You can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Go there, leave us a review. That also helps us out. We appreciate your assistance. With that, we're going to go to Sean, who has our legal update.
Thank you, Andy. So today my topic is, what is a trustee's deed and when is it used? So in Arizona, we have deeds of trust, and they are liens against real estate, and they are foreclosed. If a borrower defaults, they're foreclosed on using an out-of-court process. Basically, a trustee is appointed by the deed of trust who has the ability to notice of sale of the property if payments aren't being made by the borrower, and then to go through the process. Generally, it's 90 days, and at the conclusion of those 90 days, the trustee can sell the property to the highest bidder at a trustee sale. And upon receiving payment from that highest bidder, the trustee then issues a deed to the property. And that deed that they give to the highest bidder for the property is called a trustee's deed. So that's what a trustee's deed is. It's a deed that is given by a trustee appointed by a deed of trust who completes a sale of the property and conveys title as a result of the sale. Don't be confused with, and I see this mistake made, and frankly, when I was a young attorney right out of law school, I made the same mistake. I used deed of trust and trustee's deed synonymously with each other until an older attorney said, you need to really understand that these aren't the same document. So don't get a trustee's deed confused with a deed of trust. The trustee's deed is the resulting deed that is executed by the trustee that gives a third party title to the property as a result of a trustee sale that then occurs pursuant to the provisions of the deed of trust. So that's a trustee's deed and when it is used.
All right. Thank you, Sean, for the legal update. With that, we're going to go to a few announcements. Just as a reminder, it is Tuesday, so that means at 2:00 p.m. Arizona time every Tuesday, we have the Creative Finance Collective. What is the Creative Finance Collective? That is an opportunity for attorneys in the space that handle the transactional side and even the litigation side of creative finance. We talk about when things go right, when things go wrong, what you should, how you should be thinking about this transaction, what it is at its most basic level, and carrying you through that process. But what we're really there for the hour to do is to answer questions from you, the listener. So if you have questions, make sure to be there, and we're there to answer those questions. And we're there with attorneys that from all over the country. We've had lawyers from Texas, Arizona, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Ohio. We've had them from all over the place. So make sure to be there, post the questions. We'll get to them, and we'll be on as long as we're getting questions. So look forward to seeing you there. Also, for today's episode, we will be taking questions in the final 15 minutes, should we get any. So if you're watching and you got a question, post it in a comment. We're monitoring the comments, whether you're watching on Facebook, X, or YouTube. We're monitoring those, and we'll address those questions as we have them. Don't wait until the final 15 minutes. You'll forget the question. Post it while you have it, and we will get to it. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and get into our topic today. We're talking about wholesaling, and we've called this episode Wholesaling the Right Way. And with us to discuss this topic is real estate investor Jamil Damji. Jamil, thanks so much for being with us.
Good morning, guys. How are you today?
Yeah, we're doing great. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about this. So for those that might be watching that aren't familiar with you, there's probably not a whole lot, but for those that aren't, why don't you kind of break down a little bit of your background and tell us how you got into doing what you do?
Well, I'm Jamil Damji. I am a real estate investor. I've been in the space of wholesaling for over 20 years, stumbled into the business model trying to create an opportunity for myself in real estate where I was able to get a property at a really decent price for what it was. And I had a buyer for that property at a little bit of a higher price than what I could pick it up for. And I needed to figure out how to connect the dots. Now, this is educator, pre-internet influencer time. This is over 20 years ago when I did my first wholesale transaction. And in the time since, I've done over 7,000 wholesale deals. I'm the co-founder of one of the nation's largest wholesale operations, Keegley. And I pride myself on looking at and practicing the space and the business model of wholesaling from the standpoint of ethics. And I've seen so many things in the space and so many ways that people have blurred the lines. Of course, that being because it's an unregulated venture and an unregulated transaction style. And because of that, we've seen so many different types of standardizations and regulations and rules come into place to try to create some sense of transparency, honesty, and normalcy in the model. And some of those I welcome, some of them I question. But at the end of the day, the ethics of wholesaling is what I'm extremely interested in after having done over 7,000 of these deals.
All right. Well, as we kind of work our way into wholesaling, just a couple of other introductory questions. You've been in the real estate space for some times. There's lots of cycles in real estate, like there are in a lot of different investment sort of categories. What investment strategies are you currently utilizing or do you like right now? And what types of properties are you pursuing?
Great question. So I'm continuing to wholesale. For me, wholesaling works when the market is appreciating. It works when the market is stagnant, and it even works when the market is on a downturn. You are always going to be able to find opportunities in wholesaling, connecting the dots for people that have distressed situations or distressed properties, and buyers who are at the market or in the market at that specific time looking for a good opportunity. And so for me, wholesaling will always be a strategy that I will do. I have seen wholesaling transpire not only in small operations or larger ones like myself, but I've even been involved in a wholesale transaction where D.R. Horton was a buyer of a property that I was selling, and they wholesaled a portion of the package that I sold to them. And it blew my mind open. It showed me that even from a publicly traded company, this practice is something that's actually pretty normal in business. And so when I look at it from that perspective, I understand that wholesaling is here to stay. It occurs in every business model, whether you're talking about McDonald's, Big Macs, or real estate. Wholesaling and the wholesale step-up process is pretty standard when you're talking about, turning one thing and transforming it into another, right? So wholesaling will always be there. But in addition to that, I'm extremely interested in the affordable housing space. I have been a part of over, like I said, 7,000 wholesale transactions. And I see that at some level, I am a party to making 7,000 homes more expensive. And because of that, because I can see the honesty and the reality of that being what I've been involved in, whether it's you look at it from the positive perspective of progress and really beautifying properties and making them habitable for people and enjoyable for families and whatnot, to the fact that I have witnessed so many great people be displaced as a result of it. And so I'm looking at different strategies for affordable housing, one of those being co-living, especially here in Arizona with the way that our zoning rules are in the city of Phoenix, especially. We can get up to 6 unrelated people in a single family home And because of that, I'm finding incredible returns. I'm finding an incredible opportunity to serve the community by putting really beautiful, functional properties into the space of co-living, and at the same time getting returns that I have never seen before as an investor. I mean, I'm getting anywhere between 20 and 30% returns cash on my deals. And in some, if I'm buying them even better, there's deals where I have no money into these properties and I'm cash flowing thousands of dollars a month. And so for me, I'm really doubling down on the affordable housing co-living strategy. And then in addition to that, one of the old school strategies that people don't talk about a lot, because I don't think the younger folks like myself and Pace and the others in the influencer space have really been educated on it, but buying tax liens and tax deeds, I'm absolutely floored at the fact that there's an investment strategy out there where I can, on the worst day, on a worst case scenario, make 16% of my money, and on the best day, be able to purchase a property for its back taxes. I didn't even think that was a real thing until I bought a home from somebody who paid $6,000 for a property here in Phoenix and sold it to me for $200,000. And I asked him straight up, "Are you going to go to prison for this deal? Because if so, I want nothing to do with it." And then he explained to me how he acquired it. And so I've been diving into learning that process and really excited about what different types of strategies I can uncover in that world of tax liens and tax deeds. So affordable housing, tax liens, tax deeds, and of course, as always, wholesaling. Good,
exciting stuff. So I know you also wrote a book about how to wholesale real estate. Tell us about that book.
Yeah, so it's the book of wholesaling on the Bigger Pockets platform. It's how to wholesale real estate from the standpoint of ethics, right? Bigger Pockets has always been a platform that was a little bit hesitant to promote wholesaling and promote wholesalers just because of some of the negative connotations that exist in the space. And when they saw the process and the way that I approach it, they were really interested in hearing my voice and what I had to say about it. And so they gave me a publishing deal. I wrote that book, and it's been a bestseller. And I'm really proud of the messaging in that book, because especially if you're brand new, or if you are tenured in the real estate space and you're a licensed real estate agent or a broker, and you are not really understanding of what wholesaling is and how we add value to the marketplace, I think that book will shed a lot of light for people who have misunderstandings, people who have, maybe even justifiable issues with the model, and how I'm approaching it and trying to upregulate to make the model at some level really understandable, digestible, but to show the value of it and how it's being helpful to so many people when done correctly.
Now, Jamil, you also mentioned earlier you're the founder of Keegley. Tell us about that company and what it does.
Yeah, so a little under 10 years ago, excuse me, I'm just getting over a cough. A little under 10 years ago, I had this vision where I wanted to wholesale properties all across the nation. And I wasn't quite sure how I was going to be able to accomplish that. But I did have this idea that I wanted to do that. I saw the rise of virtual wholesaling, the rise of being able to understand and underwrite deals from all over the country, being in one centralized location. And I thought, how cool would it be if I was able to wholesale a property in every state in the United States and do it all from here in Phoenix? And of course, a lofty goal in the beginning, but I was fortunate enough to meet Josiah Grimes, Hunter Runyon, and of course, my sister and I have always been business partners. And the four of us together created and founded Keegley. Now, it started off as just a wholesale operation here in Phoenix, Arizona, but I began with the end in mind. And when I say that, one of the things that we do in my operation is everybody who is an acquisition specialist, a disposition specialist, from the transaction coordinators to anybody who's in any conversation with somebody about property, I have my entire team licensed. And I did that right out of the gate because I wanted to make sure that I was doing this the correct way, so that in the future, if I was to ever exit that company, people could take a look at it and say, wow, he checked the boxes and he actually followed the rules on every process as he went along and did this and built this company. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of what Keegley has become across the nation. We built the company on a foundation of love. And I know that sounds incredibly lofty and possibly even a little woo-woo to some of the guests or viewers listening to this. But I say that in the terms of a workplace culture that's foundational upon, understanding everybody's quality, inherent quality, and right to be there. I truly believe that when we collaborate with one another and we pour into each other, we can create a work environment for folks that is not only enjoyable to go to every single day, but really, really, really provides people a financial pathway to freedom. And in that, we focused on being able to create a franchise model in that company so that our acquisition reps and the people who work with us had a pathway to entrepreneurship by learning the trade, by learning and understanding what wholesaling is, and at then some point in the future, retaining the Keegley brand and helping us continue to grow and expand it across the country. And it's been an incredible ride to date. And I'm very proud of the strides that we've taken at that company.
Wow, that's really great. So let's get into our topic. So the name of the show is Wholesaling the Right Way, which of course implies that there's a wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
And we'll get into all of that. But for somebody maybe who's just joining us and maybe they've heard about wholesaling discussed, but they don't really have a good concept of it from somebody who's on the ground doing it day by day. Why don't you explain what is wholesaling?
Well, I see wholesaling a little different than some others may. I look at wholesaling as the act of selling potential, right? And for me, as a wholesaler, I don't make my profits from finding a house that's beautiful in retail condition, lowballing that property and trying to steal equity out of it, or buy it at such a discount that I'm really taking advantage of somebody, and then selling that for a profit. That is not what a wholesaler does, in my opinion. A wholesaler, in my opinion, is somebody who can look at a situation and find a higher and better use for it. So they see a potential gap. They see an opportunity to force some appreciation. And because of that, they have now a lucrative opportunity in their hands. And then they can take that opportunity and market that opportunity to another investor who would like to take that opportunity from them. And for a fee or a slice of that potential gap that they're able to maybe force appreciation on, they're willing to trade that so that they can get the opportunity in their hands. And so as a wholesaler, for me, I pride myself on every deal doing my best to offer sellers 100% of what I feel their property is worth and as is condition, and then finding where the higher and better use of that property is, seeing what that potential gap could potentially be, and then selling that to another investor and taking a small portion of that for myself. And so with that, you can wholesale and do one or two transactions a month, or you can do what I did, where you create a system and create a business around it and do 60, 70, 80 of those transactions a month. And so for me, wholesaling has been a way to find opportunities, create a potential gap, or find the potential gap and then sell that potential to another investor.
So in the real estate space, there's real estate licensees, there's other types of investors, and a lot of times there's this conflict between them. And I think probably sometimes rightfully and sometimes wrongfully, wholesalers kind of get a bad rap.
Yep.
But I do think that they bring value. So let's talk about what type of value does a wholesaler bring to the real estate market in general?
Well, I think it's situational, right? And I think that there's specific situations that wholesalers and wholesaling is valuable to the economy and the real estate, market in general. So when you look at the difference between a real estate agent who is, connecting buyers and sellers, and what a wholesaler does, because I think this is a question that kind of blurs the lines for agents, where they're like, well, you're doing my job because you're connecting buyer and seller. I think what a wholesaler does when they're truly practicing the craft is, again, they're looking for those opportunities. They're looking for ways to bring liquidity, bring money to a situation that may not have been financeable in the open market, and take that opportunity and put it in the hands of the right person, so that they can then go and add that inventory back into the market. Now, that's not something that real estate agents are trained on doing from licensing school to even in their brokerages. I have surveyed thousands of real estate agents, and many of whom I've asked if they've been ever trained on underwriting deals, on comping properties, or understanding value. And the answer has been 100% of the time, no. There is not a single real estate agent that I have ever met that has been taught how to underwrite properties when they were acquiring their license in real estate. So you can, how is that at all a skill set or something that they can hold up and say, hey, as a licensed agent, I can help you with your investment opportunities and be able to find you investment opportunities when I don't even know, haven't been even taught how to underwrite those opportunities. And so I think there's a big difference between wholesalers and real estate agents. And I think that our skills are vastly different. Now, when I think wholesaling comes under fire is when you have these individuals who, again, I'm sure I've been a product of creating myself, who watch YouTube and watch Instagram and they see flash and they see mansions and they see beautiful cars and they think, wow, I want that lifestyle. And apparently it's attached to this type of business model. That in itself, right? When you see all of those things, I mean, look, I've seen real estate agents driving around and making ads or shorts on their Instagram and YouTube channels where they're in their beautiful Bentley and doing all the things. They're wearing their tight suits and they're walking around in mansions themselves. I've seen that, and I see that it attracts a certain kind of fly, right? It attracts a certain kind of fly in the wholesaling space as well. But I think in the reality of it, a real wholesaler, somebody who is in the business that will last, is there as a property analyst. They're looking at the numbers. They're an investment specialist in the fact that they're looking at what is something worth right now and what could it be in a future form. And if they approach it from that understanding, and if they understand what the true meaning of equitable interest is, and they can put themselves in a situation where they are actually able to perform on a contract that they are putting themselves into, I think that's very important. But then B, being able to market and curate that opportunity and then articulate it to somebody in an honest and transparent way where they can then make a deal, create that opportunity, solve a problem for a seller or solve a problem for a property that may not have been financeable by traditional lending means, and then bring money from that investor to the table so that the seller can move on with their situation and get their property sold. And the buyer who wants to actually beautify that property or do a project with it has an opportunity to work on. And I think in that, so many different people are served, from the seller to the buyer to the wholesaler to the other ancillary businesses that are involved, from appraisers to lenders to title companies. There's a ton of value that gets added when we are in the space and we're doing things correctly.
Well, I think what's interesting about some of that, and Sean and I are in the space of law, and one misconception a lot of folks will have when they see a trial on TV and they see what looks like, kind of a cool show. And what they don't realize is for every hour that lawyer is in there in trial, it's 5 to 10 hours for every hour they're in there preparing just for that moment. And of course, that moment never looks as sexy as it does on TV.
Right.
But there is just a ton of time that goes in preparing. Same is true for the wholesaler that has the YouTube channel. They've made it, but to make it required likely thousands and thousands of hours that they don't realize. For somebody watching this, and you really mentioned this, that there's really a skill set to wholesaling, a skill set that might have some similarities to real estate agents, but it has a lot of differences. What are those skills that you think somebody needs to have to be an effective wholesaler?
Well, I think first and foremost, understanding underwriting it's like learning how to walk, and if you want to be a professional marathon runner, you better learn how to use your feet. And for me, I think as a wholesaler, the thing that made me successful was the fact that I was able to find those opportunities, that I was able to spot potential. And the only reason I was able to do that is because I'm really good at understanding value. Earlier on in my career, I interviewed over 100 appraisers to understand how they went about and actually appraised property for lending institutions. And I took the different standards that each of these appraisers would apply to their valuations, and I made a set of rules for myself that specifically happened or came up over and over and over and over again in those interviews that I had with these appraisers. And I created for myself comping guidelines and underwriting guidelines, and I committed them to memory, and they're a part of my DNA now. And for me, when I look at property, when I see it everything I think about is exactly along the lines of how would an appraiser look at this property? How would they add value, subtract value, adjust value? What would they compare it to? Why would they compare it to this versus not compare it to that? How is this unique? How is this not unique? How is this standardized? All of the things there that allow me to see the inherent similarities and then the inherent difference that allows me to create opportunity. I think when you're a wholesaler and you're good at it, that has to be your number one skill. I think the second skill that is necessarily important for a wholesaler to succeed is their capacity to resonate with other human beings, to be able to articulate and communicate the opportunities that they're able to find, to be able to conversate with people who might be guarding those opportunities so that they can create long-lasting relationships, and to be able to maintain those over years, right? Wholesalers that I have seen come into the space and leave the space quick were there as a money grab. They were there because they heard or saw that you can make $10,000 or $15,000 flipping paper doing this thing, and they come in and they're like, "Wow, this is a lot of work. I'm not sure I'm interested in this," and they exit the business. But for myself and for what I train and what I help people do is I show them that as a wholesaler, your job is to connect. I got to connect with this seller. I've got to connect with this real estate agent. I need to connect with this buyer. And through my intentions and through actually showing the fact that I care about all the parties involved in the deal by my actions, not the things I say, but how I act, by showing that, I gain confidence and I gain trust. And in so doing, I create a business for myself. And so if you can underwrite properties and become a human being that is well-meaning, well-intentioned, and able to connect with others, I think that you will be a very successful person in the business. But those two, I'd say, skills, although easy to learn, can sometimes take a lifetime to master. And so, it's the thing that I'm continuing to refine. I'm not saying that I'm the greatest connector of all, but I definitely try my hardest to see people and to meet people where they are so that I can understand the world and how they see it from their perspective.
So we've talked about the skills. Obviously there's a right way to wholesale, but that implies there's a wrong way. Talk to us about some of the things that you've seen out there in the marketplace by wholesalers that, maybe they are experienced and they're just doing it wrong, or
Sure.
or what we consider to be wrong, or you consider to be wrong, or they've just jumped in there and they have no clue what they're doing, and they're basically messing up transactions, causing problems with sellers and buyers, the whole thing. So what are some examples of the wrong way to wholesale?
Well, I think first and foremost, not understanding equitable interest is a big no-no, right? In wholesaling, what we do, our monetizable product, I guess, that we're selling and acquiring is equitable interest. And that's the right to purchase a property. And that's a commodity. That has value to it. And so I can sell that. I can sell that right to purchase. And that is where I get my profits from. And a wholesaler really needs to understand what equitable interest is and why it's so important as a legal tool, as an instrument for us to be able to monetize and make money. So understanding first the nuance of what equitable interest is important. Second, and then knowing that marketing without it is a crime unless you're a licensed agent. Now, of course, if I'm a licensed agent, I can talk about properties that may be available or are for sale or whatever, because I'm licensed and that's what I'm licensed to do. But if I'm not holding a real estate license, I can't be marketing contracts. I can't be marketing properties that I don't have equitable interest on. So actually knowing and understanding what that means is extremely important. I think the next thing is really caring about the sellers and what's going to happen with them in those transactions. And one of the reasons I started Keeglee was in the beginning, I saw the wild, wild west of lead generation, where I would be dealing with sellers who were being left on the last day of a contract where everything is supposed to be closing. They're sitting in a U-Haul, all packed up, and they've heard from nobody. And the wholesaler is gone. Not only that, the wholesaler never even put earnest money in to title. And beyond that, there's no deal. There's no buyer. There was no cancellation. There's just a ghost. And now you have a seller who has trusted that situation, believed that it was actually going to complete, and now they're stuck. I think that is something that I saw happen over and over and over again. And that was because many wholesalers didn't have a dispositions process. They were fine getting a deal under contract, but then they didn't know what to do with it. And so Keeg Lee's business model has been more of a dispositions clearinghouse where we help wholesalers who are in contract that may not have a potential buyer for their deal disposition that so they can complete on more contracts. So that I think is super important. I think the next thing is having access to capital. You can't write contracts for properties that you can't close. Like, really understand that and know that. Now, that doesn't mean you have to close. It doesn't mean that it's necessary that you close on every deal. None of that's real. But having the financial capacity to close, if you're going to sign a contract saying that you can buy this thing, is necessary. So having lenders in tow, having people available to you that can provide you a liquidated proof of funds, and that's solid and real, that's very important. So having those conversations, lining up those lenders, lining up the money, and making sure that you're not just writing contracts and making promises for things that you can't deliver on is extremely important. I think other than that, the disclosure is very important. Telling people who you are and being honest about what your intentions are extremely important in this business. And if you're not being transparent, and if you're leading people down a line of reasoning or a line of thought of what your intentions are with the property, only to then be hoodwinked or then sideswiped later on in the transaction, can leave people with a dirty taste in their mouth. And that's not helpful. For me, I love the fact that in Arizona, we have the disclosure rule where we now have to disclose on every contract that we may intend to wholesale. And I do so in one of the most, I think, brilliant ways possible. For me, as a wholesaler, but as a real estate investor, wholesaling is an exit strategy, as is buying and holding, as is fixing and flipping. And so I use a standard disclosure statement that as an LLC, I'm in the business of buying and selling real estate for a profit. And during my contract, at any point, I may elect to buy to hold, fix and flip, or wholesale the contract at my sole discretion. That one statement on my contract makes everybody aware of what I could possibly do in that deal. And as long as I'm being transparent and as long as I'm disclosing, I think that I'm doing a good job. I think beyond that, the thing that I've also taken issue with is this concept of filing memorandums. It's become like an extortion tool for wholesalers, and I'm very, very, very displeased with it. I think that the advice to record memorandums in every situation is failed. I don't think that that's necessary, and I also think that it opens up for a lot of abuse. I think that sellers who don't want to ultimately sell to you shouldn't be forced to. And I'm not in the game or in the business of holding a gun to anybody's head and holding their property in extortion so that they complete a deal with me. I'm in the spirit of every deal in a positive and helpful way. If you are no longer in that spirit with me in this transaction, then we can walk off. That's how I feel about it. Now, some are going to say, Jamil, you're out of your mind. That's not how I act. And I think if somebody makes a promise to sell me a deal, then they're going to have to sell me the deal. Fine. But what about when you cancel? Because that's another situation that happens on the flip side of it. And even though we have the right to cancel during inspection periods and during our contingencies, sometimes people are making plans based off the fact that we have made a commitment to purchase a property. And so I think it goes both ways. We have to be willing and able to let people off the hook just as much as they're able to and willing to let us off the hook when we no longer want to move forward in the deal. And so there's these things, there's these tools and mechanisms, the bait and switch of, hey, I'm going to, give you X number of dollars for your property, only to then record a memorandum and then disappear. And then 6 months later, I'm trying to sell my house and now I got to pay you. Now I got to pay you to remove your cloud. I mean, why isn't that person in prison?
So I have a few follow-up questions on memorandums. So I kind of want to get your take on it. So first, there are, and I wouldn't even call them wholesalers because they don't really intend to even sell the property.
Right.
I would call them scammers. There is a group in Phoenix, and I'm sure you've come across them with the volume you have, who basically their business model is to go offer basically higher than fair market value for the property, convince the seller that they're getting a smoking deal, get the seller to sign a contract. They turn around, they record a memorandum. They don't put up any earnest money talking about ghosting, they then ghost the seller. They don't close. So the seller thinks because the seller isn't aware that a memorandum's been recorded, right?
Sure.
That only comes up the next time they go to sell the property. There's no notice requirement or law that says, hey, if you record a memorandum, you need to send a copy to the seller to let them know you did it. And so the seller doesn't hear from this buyer. The buyer goes away. The seller thinks, they just didn't want to buy it anyway. They left. They failed to close escrow on the date, required. And next thing you know, the seller then comes across maybe a company like yours, right, Keegley, and they say, oh, this is great. This is a good opportunity. Let's do it. It goes into escrow to find out that this memorandum's out there. They contact the wholesaler, say, hey, can you remove this memo because you didn't perform? Oh, that'll be 10 grand.
Right.
So what has been your position on that? How aggressive have you been in trying to get these, shysters, for lack of a better word, to remove the memorandums in those situations?
So there are specific title companies that'll actually just insure right over those garbage memorandums. And we work specifically with those title companies because they're also they're aware that it's a scam, that these are fraudulent actors. They're not actually intending. They have no intention of closing. And what they'll do is they'll send a notice and they'll say, if you're intending to close or you're intending to perform on this, come to the table again, deposit the earnest deposit, and move forward with your deal. You have 6 days or 7 days to do so, and they don't. They'll insure over that and carry on with the transaction. And so that's one of the ways that we've been moving around it. The other way is we contact them and we say, hey, look, I'm not sure what your intention was or what you're trying to accomplish here, but what are you looking for at this point? Because from what I can see from the conversations, from the lack of response to the emails, to the lack of response to the text messages, you all but disappeared. And so you didn't actually perform on your end of the bargain, meaning you didn't close when you were supposed to close. You're technically out of contract. And so this memorandum is actually null and void at this point. Now, there's a couple ways we can deal with this. You can either take it off, or we can just take this to the Attorney General and then let them handle it and tell you how you can take it off and maybe create an additional file on you. What would you like to see happen here? And so I think they're aware, and I know exactly of the group that you're talking about, and then I'm pretty sure that the Attorney General is aware of that group as well. And at some point, the wheels of justice have to move a little bit faster. And I'd love to see some indictments. I'd love to see some people go down for that so that we can show the community that even the investor community, the wholesaling community, we don't stand for this. We're not okay with it. And if you're going to be taking advantage of people, we're going to assist law. We're going to assist law enforcement, and we're going to assist the community at a whole to remove you from the conversation, because what you're doing here is exploitation. Is exploitive. What you're doing here is criminal, and it should be prosecuted. You're not going to continue getting away with this for too much longer. And I hope at some level, at some point, they can go back and look at the previous past contracts and the different blood money that they've taken from those people, forfeit the assets that these shysters have accumulated, and start redistributing that money back to those poor individuals who had to pay that.
So another follow-up question on this, and this is, in my view, what fuels a lot of memorandums, which is wholesalers trying to backdoor or deals and steal deals from other wholesalers, right? So, wholesaler will have it under contract, everything's good until the next wholesaler shows up and offers the seller, more, knowing that there's another wholesaler involved, and said, well, as long as we can close before them, you'll get more money out of it. And then they try to basically steal the deal from the prior wholesaler. What are your thoughts on that? And have you seen that a lot in the industry?
I've seen it a little. I mean, I haven't seen it rampant. I know it does happen, and I've been a victim of it myself, where I got a deal under contract and, somebody saw my marketing, went to the property, showed my marketing to the seller. Now, interestingly enough, I had actually explained to the seller that could potentially happen. So, I'm a pretty well-known person in this business. And of course, I'm going to be doing all the things. I'm going to be getting bids for this to be a potential fix and flip. I might be putting this out to my investor network to see if anybody is interested in JVing with me or potentially taking the project from me. So I'm going to try multiple things while I'm in contract with you. And there's a possibility that someone's going to come and knock on your door and show that to you, and maybe try to convince you that they're going to be able to pay you more. I'm going to let you know right now, we're in contract right now. You've made a promise to me. I've made a promise to you. I'm going to be acting in good faith, and I'm expecting the same of you. When that happens, you can explain to them that you're happy with the situation you're in. You're happy with the deal you're in. That's the reason why you signed the contract, and send them on their way. But if you do decide that that's the route that you're going to want to go, it's going to open up a whole bag of worms, probably end up costing you and everybody more money at the end of the day. And so just before I leave, before we end this today, are you happy with the deal we made? If you're happy with the deal we made, then I don't need to think about this, and we don't need to worry about it any further. Now, having that conversation right there is enough, right? Because it talked about it. We put it out on the table. This is a potential thing that could happen. This is how people operate. And are you happy with the deal we made? And if they're happy with the deal we made, they were happy with the deal we made. That was the end of the story, right? It's what's done is done. And so I think just addressing that is important. I think one of the other pieces that I actually am a big proponent of is how you get the lead, how you get the deal. I'm not necessarily a huge proponent of going directly to homeowners and buying deals from sellers who aren't represented by a fiduciary. I prefer to do business through real estate agents. I prefer to do business with homeowners that are seeking advice and counsel from somebody who's an advocate for them and helping them make the decisions and understand what they're doing in the process. And so I prefer to be in deals that are actually represented with real estate agents, knowing I might pay a little bit more for them. But that very rarely happens to me, getting backdoored and having deals fall apart and all of this, because I have an advocate, not only for me, but for the spirit of the deal. The agent's going to speak to the seller and say, I'm sorry, somebody came and knocked on your door saying they can pay you more. Sweetheart, you're in contract here. This is how this is going to go. You can't just go and sign another contract with somebody else. And I let the agent handle that conversation and deal with any of the fallout from that. And so one of the things that I've done to actually combat that is just work through agents. Working through agents has been one of the biggest cheat codes for me, and it keeps most people honest at the table. Now, of course, you're going to get some turkey agents in there every once in a while as well. But, of course, we have Thanksgiving once a year, so we need turkeys every now and then.
Well, I think that's really interesting because, the sense, an outsider's sense of this, and I'd include myself as part of that. I'm not a wholesale real estate investor. I'm an attorney who understands what it is and can assist with it. But, the outsider sense of things is that, the real estate agents and wholesalers are clashing or at war. But it sounds to me like there are avenues for collaboration. And as far as you're concerned, it sounds like it has a high level importance of finding ways to collaborate and bringing value to each other. How have you worked to really establish that with agents?
Well, again, through performance and honesty, transparency and performance, like actually doing the deal. I close on the deals that I contract. I'm honest with my numbers. I share with them my reasoning and why I am where I am on my pricing. One of the other things is I will tend to have agents work for me as my buyer's rep. And so agents, what they'll do often, especially the ones that have a good relationship with me, is they'll use me as a potential tool, right? So if they're going on to a listing appointment and they collect information from the seller prior to the appointment that the house is in original condition or it's in distress and needs a bunch of repairs, they will typically go into that listing appointment armed with my number and then options on what they could do in addition to, right? So they can say, hey, look, I spoke with an investor who is interested in buying homes as is. There's the number of what they would give you if you sold it as is. Now, if you go this direction, that buyer will actually be represented by me. I will no longer be representing you. I'll represent the buyer only. The buyer will pay my commission and you'll get a net price to you based off of what we come to terms with. The second thing that you could do is forget my buyer. You can employ me as your real estate agent, and you can do these specific improvements that I think you're going to need to do in order for the house to be financeable. Here's where I think it would sell in that instance. But again, because you're not doing any cosmetic upgrades, we're really taking a shot in the dark here. It may not be enough for a retail buyer to want to come in and buy it. And so you might need some price reductions, and you might end up still selling it for the same price that the investor would have bought it from you, or potentially less, because we know that when a property sits on the market and days on market start to accrue, it's almost like having a salvage title on a car. People look at it and they think, wow, it's 90 days on market. What's wrong with the house? And so that's a problem, right? And so they can explain to a seller that that's a potential, but that might net you more money. The other option is we could do what this investor wants to do, which is invest a bunch of money into the property and upgrade it. And that would mean that you're going to need to come to the table with some cash to do that. But here's where I think this property sells if you do that work. So here's option A, option B, and option C. How would you like to move forward? And now I've leveled the agent up to that of the iBuyer, right? Because prior to me coming into the agent's world, the agent was losing deals to Open Door and OfferPad because they were able to give them a quick cash solution and move on with their life. Well, now the agent can do the same. The agent can do the same if they're working with a well-capitalized wholesaler who will perform and knows what they're talking about and will actually do the deal. And so by creating those relationships and articulating how I can be of benefit to a real estate agent on their listing presentation, I give them an opportunity to weave me into the story. Now, again, I'm not going to be the solution for every seller. I might be the solution for 1 out of every 10, but that 1 out of every 10 is a great situation for me, great situation for the seller, great situation for the agent. And that's how we end up collaborating with one another.
What about other real estate professionals? Do you put kind of a high level of importance on being able to collaborate, or at least be able to rely on the fact that other professionals in the space, whether they be title companies, attorneys, lenders, understand the wholesale transaction and can help facilitate it quickly?
Absolutely. I mean, I have a lead source through probate attorneys that is extremely lucrative for our company. And those probate attorneys use us and work with us specifically because we perform on the deals. We close, we get it done. If we are unsuccessful in selling the contract, we'll close on it and do the rehab. And so, you know, they feel good about the fact that they're putting their client into a situation that they can count on. With regards to title companies, oh my goodness, my relationship with Fidelity Title has been one of the greatest relationships I've had in the world of vendors, right? They support my meetups. They support our education. They support our podcast. They're so helpful. They give us lists. They come to our office and we do lunch and learns. They introduce me to other real estate agents who they think could be like-minded and are more on the investment space than on the retail space. So they make the connections and they connect those dots. So from attorneys to inspectors to title people to lenders, how many times have I dispositioned a house where a hard money lender had to take a property back once they foreclosed on it because of a borrower not being able to complete their deal? I become the go-to wholesaler for that lender to disposition the property. So I've made millions of dollars through these networking relationships. And it's just because of the trust. It's because they're like, yes, we believe this guy. We trust in what they're going to be able to do. And so we move forward. And I think as a wholesaler, if you can hold yourself up in that regard and make those relationships, connect to the attorneys, connect to the realtors, connect to the lenders. But most importantly, when they call on you, do what you say. Do what you say and watch how your business flourishes. It's incredible what happens when you actually do the things you say you're going to do. It's such a rare thing in today's world, but my goodness, when you find those people like-minded, those ones who actually perform, they all end up sticking together. And so that's how I've been able to succeed in that way.
So break down for us, kind of as we begin to close this out, for investors that are coming into the wholesale space, what are the biggest mistakes you see? New, and it doesn't even have to be new investors in the space. What's the biggest mistake they're making?
I think right now, investors in general right now are miscalculating where repairs are going to be. They're miscalculating where they may need to be purchasing and what potentially they're going to have as costs or concessions on their exits. And so they're getting in maybe a little bit too high and they're not performing, or their deals aren't performing where they needed them to perform. And then they're getting out of the business just as quickly as they got in. And so again, I think it comes to a lack of understanding of your underwriting principles and not knowing your numbers. As an investor, whether you're going to come in and wholesale, whether you're going to come in and fix and flip, whatever that is you're going to do, I think really, really understanding the numbers is important. And treating leverage cautiously, I think, is another piece. It's one of the things I learned in the first go around for me in the world of real estate. I started my career in 2002, and so I rode a wave right up until the financial crisis of 08, and I lost everything in that. And that was very difficult for me to understand and fathom as a young man in his 20s. But I saw what it was. I saw it was an experience, and I saw that it was a relationship with leverage that hadn't quite been understood yet. Leverage is important and it's very powerful, but it can take you to the heights and it can sink you to the depths. And if you can't understand how to use leverage in the correct and meaningful way, where you're using it, but you're respecting what it can do and how it can be maneuvered, and how some people weaponize leverage as a means to acquire property at even deeper discounts than what wholesalers can do, and understanding the intentions of all the parties involved. I think if you, as an investor, really start to take a step back and say, how does the people at the table make money? Then you'll understand how their intentions are potentially misaligned, and how you can align yourself with those intentions by making different choices and different moves. And so underwriting and understanding the power of leverage, I think those are two pieces that new investors, if they really understand well, will take them everywhere they want to go.
Well, and I think what's so easy to miss in what you say, because what you say is so true and so simple, but it's easy to skip over the fact that you just referenced decades of experience, decades of learning through successes and failures. I mean, that's really our best educators, right? Just life experience and business experience. But, this takes time, to learn these lessons, or to really maybe take heed of some of them, and the hours of time and years of time that go into honing this craft are really amazing. So break down for us kind of here at the end, if you had the opportunity to give one piece of advice to a brand new wholesaler, what would it be?
Well, yeah, I think right now there is a war going on for your attention out there, and that war for your attention, it's been ongoing, and it's been a battle that's been fought for centuries. And our human attention is the most valuable commodity that we have. And so, as a new wholesaler, as a new investor or an entrepreneur, just be super mindful of where you're putting your attention and learn how to focus it in one place. If you can focus and concentrate your attention into one specific thing for an extended period of time, that thing that you're putting your attention on will expand in ways that you will not even be able to fathom. And that will take you to heights that are beyond what you would even imagine. So really understanding the power behind your attention is extremely important. And then, again, I can't stress it enough. Just learn your numbers. Underwrite. It's so important. You get those things right, you're going to do great.
Wow, really good stuff. Jamil, why don't you tell our audience how they can connect with you?
Sure. I'm available on Instagram at JDAMJI, so at JDamji. Also, I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jamil Damji. I share insights on wholesaling, affordable housing, and every Sunday at 1:00, I do a special live stream that has nothing to do with real estate, but everything to do with your mind. It's Mindset with Jamil. It's topics that I dive into, things that I'm interested in on how I can become a better human being. And then I share those insights with people who are interested in hearing.
All right, really good stuff. And if you're watching, in the description of our YouTube video, we've got all of the links for Jamil, for his YouTube channel, as well as all of his other social media links. Jamil, it was awesome having you. Thanks so much. Let's do it again sometime.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great day.
All right, you too. With that, everybody, that is our show. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good day, everyone.